If you could own only one air rifle, would it be so bad if it was one of these? Welcome back to Canuck Air. What I have here on the bench is on loan, a Walther LG53 ZD model, I believe, if I'm reading the nomenclature right. This belongs to a friend of mine, and it is, in fact, his only air gun. And he's had it for, many, many years. And last year he gave it to me to give it a look over, and sure enough, I found that the piston seal was shot. This gun, likely made around 1964, possibly 63, featured a fairly early synthetic piston seal, and it had degraded to something the consistency of sort of hard candle wax, pretty brittle and all clumped up in there. So after I dug it all out, discovered that while these piston seals are supposedly still available for this gun, nobody seemed to have any stock on them. So I ended up making a leather piston seal for it, which would have been appropriate to an LG53 from a few years earlier, and fitted it in there, and the gun performed pretty much to spec, so we're fairly happy with that. But what is a Walther LG53? Well, it is actually Walther's, I believe, second model air rifle, because in the post-war years, German manufacturers found themselves unable to manufacture anything firearms related. And even somewhat reluctantly, the authorities let them finally get into air gun manufacture. Walther had never made air guns before World War II, as far as anybody knows. And so they launched a line with the LG51, LG meaning Luftgewehr, air rifle, and had some success with that, I guess, but updated it fairly quickly. And this is the LG53 from 2 years earlier, 1953. Presumably, I think somebody said it was introduced late 52, so would have been a brand new 1953 model. This obviously has a fairly sporter stock, nice smooth lines to it, fairly trim and slim, not designed to be hefty in any way. Unlike, say, the LG55, which came along, obviously, presumably a couple years later, that bulked up the stock a bit for a bit more of a target rifle type of idea. Although you can see this gun is fitted with an optional, fairly impressive and elegant diopter sight. There is provision for a regular sight on the barrel here, but that is not present on this one. It looks like this came with it originally. So the LG53, sporter style design. The LG55, pretty much the same idea, but in a bulkier target-oriented stock. And there was an LGV Olympia that came along a little bit later. I don't know the exact year. And that one, Walther bulked this thing up for more serious competition, hiding lead weights inside the stock, making a very thick, heavy barrel shroud to go over the outside of the barrel, just to basically dampen any sort of recoil you might find upon shooting a gun like this, a standard spring piston 177 caliber air rifle, just like any you might find, and had been a design that was somewhat refined with the pre-war Dianas and BSAs and Webleys. So the LGV was a very hefty gun. They have resurrected that name more recently, but the LGV Olympia dates in the 1950s. And was a cousin of this gun here, the LG53. A friend of mine, he bought this at a gun show many years ago, apparently, and it has survived a house fire. It's been borrowed by a family member who didn't want to bring it back, but anyway, it has served as a one and only air rifle all these many years. And it is, what an elegant air rifle it really is. It's kind of hard to maybe appreciate on camera what we've got here, but the stock, fairly nice wood, nice checkering here. Yeah, German sort of touch to the grip cap here. A sheet metal trigger guard, which I would have expected maybe something a little fancier, but then again, they probably had to make this gun to a particular price point, and looks like they put all the money into the rear sight. This particular LG53, as I said before, should be an LG53 ZD. Z for a rifle barrel, which smoothbore barrels were still a thing. If you wanted to shoot round balls or darts, that kind of thing, and also to save a bit of money. But I think those kind of faded away pretty quickly as Walther got into the 1950s. I don't think they bothered with smoothbore guns for too long. But this one does have the Z for rifling and D for diopter sight. Even though the Blue Book of Airguns says this was discontinued in 1953 or so, the Gun Digest lists LG53 ZD as late as 1970, so they're obviously still around. The fit and finish on this gun is very, very nice. Despite its age, it looks lovely. Very highly polished finish originally, very nicely done. All the rivets and everything are first class. And the thing that really strikes you about it is cocking it and shooting it. It is surprisingly smooth to cock it. It feels like you're more winding it up than compressing a spring. And it has a very, I won't say dead, but a very smooth shot cycle. It doesn't buzz or vibrate like other guns do, despite the fact that at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same thing, just in a very similar package. So, but I borrowed it back again, to do a video on it, and also to give it a checkup on what has happened to it in the year since I serviced it. So we'll see if it's still holding its velocity and accuracy, and how the leather piston seal is holding up. I'm kind of curious to find out. But it is a rather lovely gun, and yeah, you could do a lot worse to own something like this, that's for sure. I should point out that this is an LG53, not an LP53. LP53 came out the same year as this, but that is the Luft pistol, so the pistol cousin to this gun. The LP53 got to be a lot more famous than this one. The LP53 ended up on a James Bond poster when they needed a prop to stand in for some sort of the kind of gun that James Bond would carry, and they couldn't find a Walther PPK handy, so they ended up using a Walther air pistol. But same year, slightly similar name, but LG53. Well, let's take it apart, and I'll show you what's inside. So here's the Walther all disassembled. If we expected to find anything amazing and revolutionary here, it's really not to be found. This is basically a ordinary spring piston air gun. Walther wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary or unusual in the 1950s when this was introduced, or by the 1960s. The piston seal had been, the leather ones had been replaced with a synthetic, but those didn't exactly prove all that hardy, so I've replaced it with this leather one here a year ago, and of course it still looks fine, still working very well, and I'll put that back in the gun just fine. Piston spring, very nice condition still. Probably the original spring to the gun. The owner, who's owned it for quite a few decades, has never replaced the spring, so it looks legit. I'm going to clean off the lubricant I put on it last year and replace it with something a little better. Got my hands on some red and tacky grease, which helps dampen spring vibrations and things like that. Not that this really needs any sort of help in that department. It is a wonderfully smooth gun to shoot. This piece right here is a safety mechanism, a bear trap mechanism. So when the barrel is open, it disables the trigger, or locks the trigger, so it can't be fired. This is the trigger unit, which drops out the back of the receiver. You saw me when I pulled it out of there, and the bear trap goes up into it. This is if you expected something hewn from a solid block of steel, well, it's not. It's just a sheet metal assembly. That piece in there does look forged. That is the sear surface right there, which engages with this surface right there when it goes back in. And this little protrusion here, I believe, is what sets the trigger and allows the sear to engage. Because right now the sear is pulled back and it won't come in unless, and it kind of jams up a bit when I put it in there. So best to leave it when I put it back in the gun. I'm not going to do anything more to this. I cleaned it and lubricated it last year. It's fairly straightforward. It is, however, more complicated than just a direct sear. It does have an interlink which helps reduce the trigger pull, makes that a little finer. The only adjustment on it is actually for over travel. This little screw right here simply reduces the amount the trigger can move after the sear is released. So there doesn't appear to be any adjustment for tension on it. I imagine if you change this spring out right here, it would probably change the amount of trigger pull on there, but yeah. But everything else is pretty much just nicely made. Not a lot of sharp edges. It's not going to win any beauty contests, but it does look better than your average cheap Chinese gun, that's for sure. But some is more than just the parts. When it's all together again, this gun shoots remarkably well, remarkably smoothly. So we'll be putting it all back again. It is, after all, if it's not 60 years old yet, it will be turning 60 pretty darn soon. So all in all, it has survived very well all these years. So beautiful looking gun. And yeah, this is the barrel right here. And the cocking linkage, just a beautifully rounded and polished rivet there. You gotta love that. That one's pinned in place. These are little gaskets. Last year I had those out. They underneath here you pack it with lubricant, put it back in, it keeps it nice and tight. And this does fit really tightly into the gun. You noticed I took a fair bit of taps with the mallet to get it out of the forks in the barrel. It fits quite tightly even without any spring tension. Again, that's clearly a mark of quality and precision manufacture, that we're not just relying on cranking a screw in to get a precise fit between the barrel and the receiver. It's precisely fit from the start. So anyway, I'm going to put it all back together again, and then we'll be chronographing it and then taking it out to shoot. Here's another nice little detail to ponder on this Walther. You notice here on the stock there is a spring-loaded, very nice little spring-loaded device to hold the cocking lever flush against the tube, and also inset this little metal piece right here, which has been polished smooth, again to reduce wear and keep precision of the whole parts. Very nice. So I got the Walther back out over the chronograph, mainly to compare it with the results I did that I got last year with it. I only had 4 Crossman Premiers left, but those are the pellets I used last year, so that was a good baseline. And I kind of discovered right away that the gun was definitely slower than it was last year. And I don't think anything has seriously changed, except that I swapped out the regular lithium grease for that extra tacky, red tacky lithium grease. And I have heard that does slow springs down a little bit. It's amazing it does it that much, but and it didn't really seem to make much of a difference in the shot cycle on the gun. So may end up taking it apart and putting the regular grease back in again and see if the performance comes back up again. With the JSB Exact pellets, the extreme spread was quite low, quite tight on those, so chance for good accuracy with those ones. And then the last pellets I tried were the Geco wadcutters, the inexpensive ones, and the extreme spread on those was a bit more, but velocity is still pretty decent, all fairly consistent with them. So I took the gun out to the range and did my very best to make good use of the excellent aperture sight there. Pretty much the best group that I got with this gun was using the RWS Meisterkugel wadcutters, match wadcutters, and 4 shots went in really tight. There always has to be one that just opens the group out just that little bit. Here it's shooting a little bit high. When I moved back to 20 yards, it was moving a little bit low, so I ended up adjusting the sights a little bit later to correct for that. Got a really good group with the Exact RS, and then I tried the Predator Polymags as well, also still at 10 meters. And yeah, if it wasn't for one shot that just opened it out, I had 4 of them went into 12 millimeters, so pretty tight. Expensive pellet, but it's always encouraging to see something that's well made shoot well. Moving back to 20 yards, I tried the JSB Exact RS. That's the lightweight 7.3 grain pellet. They look a bit spread out here, but they're really not. That's only a 29 millimeter group. And I think that's probably about the limit of what I can do with aperture and peep sights. I haven't really shot that much better. Well, I think I did have a little tighter group with this gun last year at 20 yards. But it was nice to put this one back on the bench again. It is a lovely rifle, well made. You can see where a lot of the other manufacturers, would like to copy this type of design and quality, but of course try to do it at a cheaper price. So that's when you end up with all the guns that came out of Eastern Europe in the 1970s and 80s, and then eventually on to China. But very few of them attain this level of quality. So I'll be giving it back to my friend. After maybe I swap out that grease again, I might just see if it does pick up velocity. Certainly know what it is capable of doing, so very lovely gun. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you liked it. I'll be back with some more stuff, and consider subscribing.